Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Police are on the lookout for a suspicious hitchhiker moving through Maine. The Derry Chief of Police has requested that we share this information with those of you on the road. Suspect may be recognized by the following: thumbs, a considerable dampness, and he lets himself in the back like this is some kind of Uber. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And joining us via Zoom, Ohio-based filmmakers from 13th Floor Productions to talk about their Dollar Baby adaptation of Nona, titled October Roses. Welcome to the show, Brandon Lazenko and Shelby Wyant. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is exciting.
We are very excited to have you here. And before we get to talking about October Roses, I'm so excited to talk about it. I do have to turn things over to CM, who guards the rest of the interview with her life. So I hope you're prepared for what she's about to dish out.
I've thought about this long and hard, and if you guys don't give us satisfactory answers, I have Ace Merrill on speed dial, and I'm going to tell him you've been talking to his girlfriend. Sound fair?
That's a good one.
And now,
that turns out.
That's the most nerve-wracking part for me. So I'm glad I just get to get it right out there first thing. Okay, what was your introduction to Stephen King's work?
So my dad is a huge horror fan. So I think that my first introduction to Stephen King's work was The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm not sure if there's something.
I haven't read that one.
No, me either. So, I'm very excited to cover it on the show.
I'll think of you when we finally get to that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely read it. It's interesting. It's kind of different than his other works, but I don't know. I like it. It's got it's very baseball themed. So if you like baseball, you'll like it.
Okay, awesome.
Nice.
All right, my turn. I grew up with learning disabilities, so I wasn't much of a reader per se. So I had been more exposed to his works, in film. For me, it's definitely the original two-parter It. Just because as a child, and I'm sure that's such a common answer.
It was groundbreaking, though.
Yeah.
But, you asked, what was it that introduced me? And that's my answer. That's what introduced me. Was It.
I think that's a great answer, and it's a great introduction to Stephen King's work. I feel like you're lucky in a way that was yours.
Well, yeah, and then at the end, when it's like a giant spider crab.
Did you see the documentary where they talked about all the things, all the capabilities that Final Puppet had, and no one ever taught them how to use it? It could have been so much cooler.
You're both doing good so far, just to let you know. Okay, next question. Do either of you have a Stephen King moment from any of his work, books, or adaptations that have just stuck with you over the years?
For me, I think I was asked this similar question in an interview a while ago, and it sparked this huge conversation about Lisey's story. So I didn't read that until I was an adult. I don't even know when it came out, but I think it's not that old. But I think that's the story that stuck with me the most, because throughout this writing process, especially, we did a lot of research on how Stephen King writes women, and not great critical reviews. So I actually read Lisey's story as we were starting the writing process, and I think that she's captured so nicely. So I think that was kind of a turning point for me of wait, we don't need to discredit everything that he's written and stuff. So yeah, so that's it for me.
We're actually covering that now. It's our first time reading it, and we're about 300 or so pages in. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's gotten gruesome.
Yeah. It's the only Stephen King book that I was devastated feeling by. I don't know. It just captured that emotion for me.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Brandon, how about you?
Probably Green Mile, when John Coffey dies, just because that's just that just teaches pure empathy right there.
Yeah.
It's he knows he's innocent, they know he's innocent, but they got to do it anyways, and it's just it's a hard moment.
It is a sucker punch that stays with you for a while.
Yeah, I know. And then when he says that when they don't put the bag over his head because he's afraid of the dark,
Oh, God. I sobbed
Those little
in the
things,
movie.
those little details.
Now we're depressed.
Oh.
I'm kind of just now reflecting on all of our interviews and discussions and realizing we very much get off on talking about the saddest, most dramatic, depressing moments.
Makes us feel alive.
Yeah, I
Yes,
guess so.
exactly.
Good work is good at that.
You both pass, I think. Yeah, I think those are
Terrific.
pretty good, Josh.
All right, you can finally reblock Ace's number.
Like I have any power at all in this.
All right, now you adapted the short story Nona through the Dollar Baby process. For anybody who has not read the story, how would you summarize it?
So this definitely like the short story version. It is about a college student who is really down on his luck, and he's kind of hitchhiking back through Maine. He doesn't really have a destination in mind, and he comes across someone who seems sort of familiar to him, but is still very mysterious. And they, kind of go on this killing spree together. So I think our adaptation's a little bit different because we put a little bit more backstory to Nona, and we kind of focused on that for her. But in the story, she remains very mysterious, and she doesn't really have like a concrete character throughout the story.
That's okay. So I'm curious that and what you mentioned earlier about researching how King writes women and what you liked about Lisi's story. Is that what drew you to this one?
So Brandon actually had the final say in the story. I really liked One for the Road. That was the one that I don't know. I was just drawn to that one.
We read fun debate.
Yeah.
We were on the way to Maine to visit Stephen King's house when we were listening to it came down to those two.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was a long car ride and a long debate.
So part of the reason why I was like initially turned off from Nona was that I was like, oh, she's very like I don't know. She's just not like the female character that I would want to write about. But then, we talked about it, and then we decided that we were going to beef up her backstory and kind of give her some motivation and make her a little bit less than just like a tool that he's using to justify some of the stuff that he's doing. That's kind of how the story transformed. But yeah, I definitely struggled with that a little bit. So when I think about like what was the most difficult part for me of adapting the story, it was that because, like obviously we're huge fans of his work and he's an amazing writer. So it was weird to like figure out what we could improve on because the story's already really good or we would never have chosen it. But that was one of the ways that I felt like we could adapt the story into our own without like changing the crucial elements of it.
Mm-hmm. That sounds awesome. I think too, I've been making decisions wrong. We need to drive to Stephen King's house for every big decision.
Now, I'm really glad you brought that up about Nona, because that was the thing that jumped out to me reading the story, is that she does have a very blank slate role. So what I'd love to know what you guys did to really make her a fully three-dimensional character.
Without spilling too much.
Yes, without spoiling too much.
So part of it is definitely our twist. I will say this. We combined one of the other female characters in the story because Nona's not the only female character in the story. I guess like a underlying theme of the story is kind of his like problems with women, and we go through like multiple women that he's had relationships with. So we kind of made that Nona character like more historical in his life rather than just this apparition that shows up and is kind of really convenient for him at the moment. So we definitely rewrote some history using some of the stuff that was already in the story. But I also think you just like get a good look at who she is and like what she's thinking, and she doesn't really say a lot. We didn't change that. She's still it's still mysterious, but I think that our actress really pulled off like bringing that depth to the character that you don't really get when you're just reading it.
Yeah, implied characterization is so hard to pull off, but man, when you do it, it feels magical.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. I love the name, October Roses. I love the name change. What prompted the title change?
I was reading the first draft of the script, and then I would go back and read the story, and then I would read the script and read the story, and I just thought to myself, a lot of people have done Nona, and I don't think that we're doing Nona. I think that we're doing something that's a little bit more our own. We're definitely following King's storyline, and the characters and twists and this and that. But ultimately, we did take a lot of our own creative directions when it came to really making that adaptation between, writing to film. So when I was reading it, I think it's like the first page of the book, he talks about dry October roses. And I thought to myself, that sounds kind of cool. So I just wrote literally on the front page of the script, I said, I'm open for a name change, October Roses ? As just an example of like a name change. And then I went to the writers. I was just like, hey, let's think about a name change. And they're like, yeah, I like it. And we're like, okay, cool. So then we just went with it.
Amazing.
I love how you talk about bringing your own, both of you have mentioned bringing your own style to it, which is something I think that on our podcast we've come to view differently and really appreciate more than I think we used to as kind of the casual, observers of adaptations, not thinking as critically about it. And so I'm really excited to hear you talk about that, because it's so cool to see the filmmaker's unique stamp on stories that we love so much and are familiar with.
Yeah, and especially, as a reader, these stories have been out for decades. You might become married to a certain way that you had it fixed in your brain, but obviously we're all independent filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things in those stories that we just don't have the resources to do. So, when it comes to making the adaptation and trying to be true to the story, there are certain things that are just kind of out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think part of the changes that we made to the story were some were creative, some were just practical. Someone's like, we are not going to be able to pull this off on this scale. So let's bring this back and see what we can actually do with it.
Do you find that kind of forces you into this creative zone that you might not have otherwise been pushed towards when you're limited in that way?
For me, it definitely does. So the other writer is definitely more like sci-fi fantasy focused, and I'm more like strictly horror, like psychological thriller. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that I like to write. So when we were thinking about like, how do we make this a horror story? Like, how do we take this from like Natural Born Killers or something like this, killing movie and make it horror? So his ideas were definitely more sci-fi based, like things that I never would have ever even thought about, and still stayed within that realm. So what we ended up like coming together in the final product that we actually came up with, I think it's like a good mix of all of those things. The story, like it talks a lot about rats, like that he's kind of like seeing women as rats, and like there's a lot of like rat imagery and stuff going on. And that was one of the things that we were like, nope. So let's see how we can redo that. So that's kind of part of like where the October Roses came in, is that we kind of replaced like some of the rat imagery with a lot of like plant and organic imagery, which was way more within our budget. So
that sounds so awesome. That's a very challenging thing, because all those recurring images and the recurring themes are so tied together. But when you can find like just that good twist to make it something so new and so different, I can't tell you how excited I am to see this. This is
very excited to see you.
Yeah. How far along are you? You're done with principal production?
Yeah. I should be getting cut 1 by the end of this week. So
wow.
Nice.
We'll see where it goes from there. Thankfully, my editor right now is working on it full time. So
that's amazing.
Hopefully, once we get it to picture lock, we can just start tossing it out to all the different departments, and everything come together like a symphony, and everybody can see it hopefully as soon as possible while we still have the rights.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's incredible.
Which actually, our rights expire this month.
Oh. God!
But I had previously talked to them, and they said that they would do another year with
us.
Great, yeah, that's awesome.
Getting those extensions, they've been very good about the extensions throughout pandemic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you guys have a massive get to your crew. You have Robert Kurtzman and Marcy King. They came on as executive producers to head up your effects department. What did you? How did that swing come about? What made you decide to take that shot?
I just had nothing to lose, really.
Perfect.
and that's a line that I actually ended up using. But I just knew that he was a legend in the horror industry, and he has worked on Misery and Children of the Corn and Green Mile and Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep and a couple other ones. So, I mean, what better person than somebody who has that extensive experience on the set of a Stephen King film, and he lives an hour away from me. He has no idea who I am, and he doesn't care about who I am. So how do I get him to care about who I am and what I'm doing? So I had prepared like a script almost, in a way, like a pitch, an elevator pitch, because I went on to IMDb, and his number on IMDb is just like a 330 number, which is our area code. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is like his personal cell phone. Like,
that's amazing.
So like I actually waited a couple of weeks so that I made the call on Friday the 13th. I thought that might add a little spice to it. So when I called, Marcy answered, co-owner. And I did not expect that at all, to hear a woman's voice when I called. So it really kind of threw me off at first, but I came in asking for a lot. And she was just telling me no and just trying to get me off the phone, to be honest. I was like, hey, will you donate this? We do this, we do that. And she's like, that's not really what we do. And I told her, I said, listen, with the way this conversation is going, I have nothing to lose. So I'm just going to keep asking you for things and we'll see if something sticks. And she thought that was funny. And by the end of the conversation, she was like, you know what? You seem very passionate about this project. Why don't you send me over the scripts and we'll see what we can do. And at that point, we were in between scripts. So like right when I got off the phone, I call Shelby and I call our other writer. I'm like, you guys have 2 days. Get me something as soon as possible.
Oh, damn.
And then like she emailed us later that week and she was like, hey, let's set up a meeting and maybe we can talk a little bit more about this. And I was like, okay, cool. So we set up a meeting at their studio, which was super cool because their studio is also like a museum in a way of industry horror.
Yeah.
And we walk in and he's working on some Netflix thing, which is super cool. But then we go and we sit down and honestly, the meeting with them was probably about 3 hours long and we barely talked about the movie. So it was great. And then they were on board and it was just kind of downhill from there.
Did it take that time because you were fanboying a little bit or?
Yeah.
I for sure was. So Kurtzman lives like 10 minutes away from where I grew up. So and my dad actually went to the same high school as him, but they didn't know each other. So my whole life, like I said, my dad's a huge horror fan. So when I was like 15, Kurtzman moved back to Ohio and he opened a haunted house and me and my dad went. And that's when he was working on Tusk. So the haunted house was in his studio. So we walked through his studio and he's working on these like gigantic tusks. And of course, no one knew this weird movie was about to come out. But that's like, that was like a formative experience to me. So like, yeah, like being there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, full circle. Like I finally get to meet this person and we get to work with them. So I was for sure fangirling. Brandon was a little bit.
Yeah, he's a really stoic guy too. So, Marcy is extremely charismatic and so easy to talk to. So it was really honestly great that she's the one that answered the phone instead of him because I doubt he would give me 5 seconds. But at this point, I hope that he is happy with the decision that Marcy did make.
So getting to work with them on the set and in the pre-production, what sort of things did you learn from working with them?
There were a lot of problems that we were running into as you do on any independent film. And, there was at one point that I just needed to take myself away. And I found Kurtzman and I had a quick conversation with him just to kind of put me back in the headspace that I needed to be in. And he pretty much told me, I've been in this industry for almost 4 decades, and I still run into problems that I've never ran into before. What I took away from my experience working with him and his wisdom and his experience was no matter how big the production is, you're always going to run into issues, and filmmaking, the process of filmmaking never gets easier. The only thing that's going to make it easier is how experienced you are and how much you're willing to sacrifice.
That's an amazing lesson.
Yeah, that is a terrific lesson. So what sort of technical challenges did you guys go from? We talked a little bit about the budgetary things, but what were those things that stood out as you were going from story to script to actual production that was just the rocky road along the way?
It was rocky. There were a couple times that I was like, I don't know, but I just, made sure that by any means necessary, everything would come together. But it was like every day was a new catastrophic issue.
Oh, shit.
If it was not fixed, the entire project would cave in.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times that, I just had to take a step back and realize I am in way over my head right now. How do I fix this? And one of the biggest problems for us was trying to be true to a time period. One thing that's really difficult to be successful in independent short films is period pieces.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just so much around you that you need to control that you don't have control of as an independent filmmaker. There were a lot of issues with that on set, getting certain vehicles that are going to sell the time period because, you get even a Crown Vic as a police car completely takes
sure,
it
yeah.
from the 70s, which is what we were aiming for. And it was just every single day I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, well, what do I have to fix now? And there was one day that we got like halfway through the day of filming and I was like, whoa, this is going very smoothly. And then sure enough, something happened. I forget what it was. I should have probably kept a log of. All I'm saying is this film was a great school for problem solving.
That's terrific.
We joked that it might have been a cursed film.
Oh, no.
So, we have writer, director. Have you been sharing it from start to finish, or was this, Shelby taking the ball at the beginning with all the writing and then passing it over? Or have you guys done pretty evenly?
We've pretty much been, I would say, together throughout the whole project.
It's amazing.
I heard about this on Reddit and I text Brandon and I was like, hey, we should do this. And I mean, this was kind of just like this will be a funny thing to talk about, and maybe we'll plan it. And then Brandon was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I was like, wait, I was just kidding about that. But then within a week of me even saying hey, have you heard about this program? We should do this. We had our core group of producers and then it just kind of spiraled from there. And really for me, it's been a whirlwind because even 6 months ago, we thought this was a small project that we were doing with our friends and it was going to be fun, and then now we got the Kurtzmans involved and we brought on so many other producers. And I mean, the support for this project has just been crazy. We went to Kurtzman's autograph signing today and we had people that were like, can we take a picture with you? And we were like, no, we're just regular people. Take a picture with Kurtzman. So yeah, it's really spiraled so quickly and it got so big so fast that we've pretty much done every single thing together.
Shelby, I want to know from you, what scene is it that you wrote that you were most excited to see brought to life?
So the scene in the bowling alley from the story, there is one scene that we added that I'm really excited about, but I don't want to give the twist away.
All right.
As soon as you watch it, you'll know what it is. It's an amazing scene. It's not in the story at all, so you'll know it. But the bowling alley scene, I think, was the best because it's just it had such a clear aesthetic to it. And that the bowling alley scene is really the crux of why we decided to do it in rural Ohio, because we knew that we could find these bowling alleys that haven't been updated since the 70s. So that was really that's where we started location scouting. That was really, I guess, what informed the vision for the whole thing was I want this 70s bowling alley. And so that was my favorite scene. And that was actually the best day that we had filming. We had tons of extras come and it was just very high energy.
Wow.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was amazing. That was my favorite day. It was awesome.
That sounds kick. I can't wait to find out what the secret ending. And Brandon, what scene are you most proud of? After you said cut, you were like, I fucking nailed it.
Honestly, the entire film.
Hell yeah.
And I'm typically, especially when it comes to art, I'm not one that toots my own horn, and it's not even me tooting my horn because I could not have made this movie look and sound and feel as good as it does without the people who made it happen. I was just the guy that said, all right, on your mark, set, go, stop. They're the ones that made it as good as I hope that it's going to come out. But for me, when it comes down to it, I'd say two scenes. One is going to be the bowling alley scene as well. And for me, it's the aesthetic, but it's also the emotional connection that our actors had. It was great. And, we did all of this in Northeast Ohio and Kent State University, students. And we were really just trying to make this kind of a knit Ohio project. But because Nona is the name of the story, she was the one exception that I was willing to, look outside of maybe what I had available to me locally, because I wanted to make sure that I got the absolute perfect person for that. So we put out a casting call and we got over 500 women.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It was insane. We had over 500 women submit for it. Our casting director throughout the process, I'd see a video here and there and we'd decide who we were going to give callbacks. And when we got the callbacks, there was 20 girls that he wanted to show me. And Kyla, who was our Nona, was maybe the third girl. And after one of the monologue that she took, not really monologue, but the scene that she did in her callback was the bowling alley scene. And after I watched it, I said, I don't want to see the other ones. This is her. This is Nona. Pull the trigger right now. So I just think that we got the perfect people for those roles, and it really comes to fruition in that scene, and that's why I love that scene so much. And then the other one is the ending mausoleum scene, just because I took a lot of creative liberties in that scene that I just think are super artsy and hopefully turn out cool. Because the thing is that when you try artsy on set, it doesn't always turn out in the editing room. But you know, I have failed at that before as a director, but hopefully I learned from my mistakes. And
can I ask how the animated intro is coming? Like the little teaser at the beginning of your fundraising video.
That's awesome.
I was like, this is already kick-ass.
Yeah, so that's another thing. When I was reading this story and he's having that dream sequence, there's just no way that I could do that live action.
Oh, no.
There's no way I could. So I was like, all right, you know what? Nobody ever does is like animated Stephen King. Nobody ever does animated Stephen King. So let's give it a shot. And I think right there at the beginning, it'll draw your attention and, you know, hopefully it'll be a good thing from there. But, you know, I had this tattoo artist who just has such great art. And I feel like when it comes to graphic designers and this and that, tattoo artists just have a very unique style.
Yes.
And I think works really well with this kind of grungy, like dirty, kind of smudgy charcoal effect that I'm going for.
Yeah.
And my brother is a computer whiz. So those two working together, he's creating these images on his iPad and then sending them over to my brother, and my brother's manipulating them and making them move. And so it's going to be super indie animation.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I think it's going to be like the style that I'm going for. Indie is like, it is the right way to.
It's just in your campaign video. It's such an attention grabber.
Yeah.
That I think it's such a strong choice for an opening.
What was the response like when you guys, you mentioned that this is more of a tight-knit project. When your community found out that you were bringing this Stephen King Dollar Baby here, what was that response like?
It's unbelievable. Like I said, it just exceeded all of my expectations. Part of it is that we decided to film it around my hometown. So, you know, I mean, it's really small towns in Ohio, like towns of 2,000 people. So this is really exciting. And people love to support someone from their hometown. So I feel like we could not have done this film anywhere else. And I've said that a million times. We had 18 meals we needed to provide, and we ended up buying 3. We had 15 that were donated by catering companies and restaurants and stuff. And that was like, we hardly had to ask anyone to do things. We had people reaching out to us saying like, hey, what can we do? Can we bring food? Can we donate plates? Can we donate water? Things like that.
There's this guy who his dad owned antique semis from like the 60s and 70s, but they didn't work anymore. So he had to individually and personally tow them from their lot.
Oh my God.
That we were shooting at. And it was all his idea. And he was like, I just want to be a part of it.
Wow.
And he
That's
got
amazing.
probably about a dozen of these like 60s semi trucks for our trucker scene.
That kicks so much ass.
No, and then we also got another that's a famous truck, apparently.
Yeah, it's one of the top 100 semi trucks in America. It's an award-winning truck, which I didn't even know that was a thing. But
I didn't either.
Got it.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it's been amazing. You know, we at first, when we were talking about budgeting and how we were going to get our finances for this setup, one of our crew members was like, you know, one thing that we don't have right now is an audience who wants to be a part of this. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take that. I'm going to run with it. So I took the idea of the project because we're shooting it in the Mansfield, Ohio area. And the last Dollar Baby Stephen King movie to be shot in that area was Shawshank Redemption, which is the most popular Dollar Baby movie ever made.
Yeah.
We're literally shooting like right around the corner from the Mansfield Reformatory. And I reach out to one of the local newspapers that's super small town. The newspaper is like maybe like 3-4 pages. And I was like, hey, you know, this is something that really cool that we're doing. And she thought it was really cool. So she did this story. And then from there, it just spread like wildfire. We had people reaching out to us. We were on Good Morning Cleveland. We've been on other podcasts and all of these different news channels and different newspapers. And it's been insane.
That's amazing.
That's so terrific. Let's hop in our imagination helicopter, and we are at a film festival. October Roses, the credits are rolling, people are walking out of the theater. What are you hoping is going through their mind, or what you want to hear them say when you finally get to see this with an audience?
I want people to say, I want to make a movie like that. And I think that like we have two audiences for this. Like one is like our film community, but the other is like this community of fans that we've built up because we've had so many people reach out to us and say like, oh my gosh, I want to do film, or like, you know, things like that. Like so many of our extras came up to us afterwards and were like, thank you so much for this opportunity. Like, how do we get involved? We want to do film. Aside from the festivals, like our local screenings that we do, that's really the thing that I want people to come away with, because people watched us film this. Like we were on sides of streets, like filming this. So like people
stopping
passed
cars.
us.
Yeah, like literally, we were fighting the night at one point. We had 10 minutes before the sun was rising and a half a page to shoot.
Oh shit!
And we're on like this country road, and people. It's like 5 a.m, and these people are going to work, and we've got PAs. Like just stopping. We got lines of cars and we're like, hey, when can we let them go? We're like, I don't know.
Never. So excited for these people that like saw this and were like, oh, how is that ever going to look like a movie? Like, that's just the street I live on. For it, like to see it and be like, wow, yeah, I could take a camera out on my street and I could make something like this.
And for me, one thing that I really love about how I had approached this is how stylized it is. It has a very, very unique look. We shot it on Arri Alexa with vintage 60s Russian lenses. So it's got this really good look. Our lighting design is just so beautiful, and it's intentional in the story as well, along with, like I said, everything that plays into the period piece aspect of it. It's such a well-crafted piece of work. For me, I want people to walk away wanting more, even though I hope that we tie everything up, but like wanting more of that style of storytelling.
Yeah. Well, listening to you guys talk about all of this it just feels inspiring, and some of the things you've said, like these little nuggets of, I don't know, just talking about the film and the lighting. I'm so excited that we don't get enough like really thoughtful, stylized things recently, I feel like.
It's such a risk. And I think people they don't trust their own vision enough.
Yeah.
But so it's nice when filmmakers are like, you know what? It's coming out the way I see it.
Gotta take risks, but no, that's the thing is, as an early filmmaker, you take those risks and it doesn't come out the way that you wanted it to. And that's, you watch it over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I've seen my own work. And I watch it, I hate that part. I hate that. And then all I'm doing is I'm just learning about how I would have done things differently, so that now when I approach another film, I'd be like, you know what? That's the reason why it didn't work this time or that time. I'm going to try it this way. So my goal in filmmaking is to never make the same mistake twice.
Yes. I would say I want to make all new mistakes.
Now, if there's someone listening that is thinking about getting their own dollar baby and trying it themselves, what advice would you give them after everything you've been through?
I said this earlier. I used the phrase, by any means necessary, to get me through everything that I needed to get through, because I am being 100% genuine when I tell you the making of this film definitely changed me as a person. I had been put into a lot of very tough situations, had to have a lot of very tough conversations, had to make a lot of tough decisions on the fly. And I had to do a lot of just things that I didn't want to do, but I realized I had to do. These were conversations that I had to have. These were phone calls that I had to make. Like when we were trying to get the budget for the movie, we were going door to door, pretty much business to business, trying to get people to donate. And, we got people who donated like 24 shirts for us to sell. Another guy donated a 9-foot banner for us, like an October Roses banner, which is super cool. But for me, anytime that I was about to I was forced to make a phone call that I didn't want to make, or a conversation that I had to have, or if I was told no when I needed somebody to tell me yes, I just kept reminding myself, by any means necessary, this is going to get done. I'm not going to take no for an answer. If they're going to tell me no, then I'm going to go over here and ask them. And that's how I got it done, because if it wasn't for that mantra and that mindset that I had, there were so many exits that I could have taken.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't let myself. So as a filmmaker, independent filmmaking is the hardest filmmaking, just because you don't have the resources that studios have, and that is in regards to actors and, you know, the people who are handling your equipment and the quality of equipment that you have. And you can't just walk into a Subway and be like, hey, you know, we're Paramount and we want to shoot a scene for you. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But no, they got to run up through the chain and get permission. And then, so it's just, you're going to be told no a lot. And things are not going to work out the way that you want. And you're going to have to pivot and you're going to have to take a lot of side steps. But if you stop, then that is where your career is going to stop. So just remind yourself, by any means necessary, if you want to do it, you can do it. One thing I realized throughout this is once you realize that anything is possible, anything is possible.
Yeah.
And a lot is possible. Like, you're right. Like he said, you know, you get told no a lot, but you get told yes a lot. Like there's a lot of people that like Stephen King. There's a lot of people who like want to see one of his stories adapted. So just pretend like you have an audience. Like just fake it. That's what we did at the beginning. We got some newspapers with like literally no proof of concept. And we were just like, hey, if you trust us, I swear we will get you something that you can run. And they did. And like, we had so many people that followed our story from the beginning. And now we have stuff to show them. And they're like, wow, this is really cool. And we're like, yeah, we told you. We just didn't have anything at the time. So just like go for it. Just jump in and like something will happen, I swear.
So is this your first production together as a team?
So Shelby and I have been dating for about 6 years. So her and I initially, we worked on, she was a writer and I was a director for a short I did a long time ago. And that was her introduction into it. It was a 48-hour film festival, if you guys have heard of it.
I love those.
Oh my God. Those are
They're brutal.
They're the best.
So yeah, it was one of those. And then I had done my first professional film that took probably about 4 years to complete. And then after that, we did a film last fall. And then it was that film, you know, after the 4-year film had happened, I was like, you know what, this is probably it. Nothing's coming out of it. You know, just, I like my job. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But then we did this film last fall and it just clicked with me. And I was like, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. And then when she brought the Stephen King idea, I was just like, it's just fallen into place. And that's exactly what's happened. And as I told you guys, we've ran into issue after issue after issue. And every time I just tell myself it's part of the story. This isn't supposed to be easy. If this was easy, it would be exciting.
Yeah,
if
that's
this
true.
was easy, anybody could do it.
I really like the idea that the tough moments are just part of the journey. You have to go through those to get to the end.
It's a story I'm going to tell later. It's this, how boring would this conversation be if everything went perfect?
Yeah. Oh, it's a breeze. End of story.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell us what's next for you. What's next in your journey?
I just want to see what comes our way. I know that we've been reached out to by, you know, some other filmmakers, and my goal for my next film is to make an investable feature. Shelby and I have been bouncing some ideas back and forth, and the other day we had one that stuck, and it's something that we're going to kind of dive into. Our goal is to have a feature script ready to pitch by the time October Roses is ready to be shown, just so that it'll be like monkeys swinging from branch to branch.
Absolutely.
We also, we're like in the process, we've been in the process for a little bit of establishing a nonprofit. So we have a lot of goals with our nonprofit, but one of the things is that we both work with kids, or we both work with people, I guess. He works in mental health and I work in voc rehab. So we both, you know, are helpers, but I really want to help like other independent filmmakers. That's what I found through this process. Like I didn't really know what to do at the beginning of this. Like I'm not a film person. I've written for a really long time, but I've never done like the logistics of producing a film, or I don't know like what you do. So it's just a lot of like trial and error. Like, hey, I wonder if you can call this restaurant and see if they'll donate to Crafty or stuff like that, and figuring it out. So I really want to give back and like help other independent filmmakers, especially with like managing their social media and stuff. I don't really have any experience with that, but I just want to be able to like light a fire under people and say like, hey, here's what's possible. So that's one of the main goals of our nonprofit that we're trying to start. We also want to do like workshops and stuff at local libraries. We've got asked to speak at a couple local events and things like that. So we want to do that. And then ultimately we want to start a film festival where we can showcase like some of the films that are coming out of Ohio, specifically because there's a huge film industry here that I think a lot of people don't know about. Pittsburgh, you know, like some people say like, oh, Pittsburgh is great for films, but Cleveland is amazing for films. They have so many film organizations, and like Akron, we live in the Akron area. There's so many people out here, but there's just not really the resources to help build those things up.
Some of the greatest people in the history of horror are from Ohio. So we just wanted to, you know, continue to highlight these artists who are born here. You know, we got Robert Kurtzman, obviously. Wes Craven's from Ohio. And then we just learned tonight that the guy who created Chucky is from Ohio.
Midwest
all of these,
represent.
iconic original monsters, at least for my generation, all came from Ohio, which is just such a cool and motivational thing to recognize.
So you guys are here to keep that spirit alive.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with Ohio stuff, but there's tons of astronauts that are from Ohio, more astronauts that are from Ohio. And the joke is that that's because people are so desperate to get out of Ohio that they become astronauts. But I guess maybe that's the same thing with horror. They need so much escapism that horror is just booming in Ohio.
Maybe it's just so fucked up here.
Or maybe the astronauts are so scared because of all the
They're
horror.
fleeing, yes, from the dreams of Ohio.
Yeah.
So where can people follow your film, your guys' career, all of these cool things that you have coming up?
They can follow our Facebook page. We have an Instagram and Facebook. They're both Nona Film Official. We have a website too. It's just nonafilmofficial.com.
So even though it's October Roses, we still stuck with Nona,
Makes
just so that we had a recognizable connection.
And we're really active on Facebook. We post almost every day. I respond to all the messages that we get. So I love talking to people. So even if someone's I want to start a dollar baby, I don't know what to do, talk me through the process, we're more than happy to talk to people. That's really been the best part of this for me is some of the messages that we've gotten. Brandon said, a lot of people from the area had parents that were in Shawshank Redemption, and they reached out to us and said, oh, my dad did this in Shawshank. And that's so amazing. And there were so many stories like that, personal connections that were coming through. And those were the stories that it just made everything so emotional and so personal for me, because I was okay, these are the people that we're going to let down if we don't make this happen and follow through with all of it.
My favorite story, sorry to add on to that.
No, okay.
Go for it.
We held this fundraising event before production in Willard, Ohio. And we had all these people donate all these things for raffle baskets. And by the end of the night, we called all the raffle winners, and there was one person who didn't claim their basket. So the next morning, I looked at the ticket and I called the number on the ticket and I said, hey, is there a time that I can set up to, give you your basket? And she said, oh, don't worry about it. We drove all the way there from Columbus, Ohio. We just thought that what you guys were doing was really cool and we wanted to come support. So these people who were hours away, and have no connection to the film at all, was exposed to the story and felt passionate enough to literally go out of their way and inconvenience themselves to come support us. So it's tiny little things like that when I say by any means necessary, it's those people that I'm doing it for, because that person went out of their way for a complete stranger. And I've thought about it since then. I don't know if I would be the same person to do that.
It's crazy.
It sounds like a lot.
I know listeners all over the world might not understand this, but there's hearing that story being fellow Midwesterners, I'm yeah. it's there's something that Midwest hospitality and that wanting to help each other up, man. That's those stories
crazy.
happen in the Midwest so much. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, before we wrap up the interview, is there anything that you guys want to talk about that we may have missed or anything?
No, I think this is the most in-depth interview that we've given so far.
Terrific! That's my goal. That's what I want.
It was funny the other day, literally, because we just had another article come out, and I told Shelby, I was I just stopped reading them because it's all this, because they always ask us the same questions, and it's always the same answers. But this has definitely been a much more in-depth
Good. I'm glad.
expose.
Brandon, Shelby, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We are so excited to see October Roses when it comes out. Please keep us in the loop. Keep us updated. We'd love to share and support what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was awesome.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode. For CM Alexander, Brandon Lazenko, Shelby Wyant, this is Joshua Kahn reminding you, if you stop, that's where your career stops.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to our interview with Brandon and Shelby about their dollar baby, October Roses. We hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to talk with them. They are so nice. When we asked them what they wanted me to plug in the outro, their response was just to tell their followers and supporters how grateful they are to them. And they did a really fantastic job with their dollar baby. We highly recommend that you keep up with them and support their work, and you can do that by following them on their Instagram and Facebook at Nona Film Official and their website at nonafilmofficial.com. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.